Imagine this. You find $100 on the street. It feels amazing, right? A sudden rush of happiness, maybe even excitement. But now imagine the opposite. You lose $100 from your wallet. That feeling, it hits harder. It lingers longer. It bothers you more than the joy of finding that same amount ever could. Why does losing feel so much worse than winning feels good? This is where one of the most powerful ideas in psychology comes in: loss aversion. And whether you realize it or not, it influences almost every decision you make, from the way you spend money, to the risks you avoid, to the opportunities you miss. Loss aversion is a concept from behavioral economics and psychology that explains a simple but profound truth. Humans experience losses more intensely than equivalent gains. In everyday life, this means losing something hurts about twice as much as gaining the same thing feels good. And this isn't just a theory, it's backed by decades of research. The idea was famously introduced by psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, who developed what's known as prospect theory in 1979. Their work showed that people don't think about gains and losses in a purely rational way. Instead, our decisions are shaped by emotions, and losses carry more emotional weight than gains. In one classic experiment, participants were given a choice. Option A, receive $50 for sure. Option B, flip a coin. Heads, you get $100. Tails, you get nothing. Even though both options have the same expected value, most people chose the guaranteed $50. Why? Because the possibility of getting nothing, the loss, felt too painful. But here's where it gets interesting. When the same scenario was framed differently: option A, lose $50 for sure. Option B, flip a coin. Heads, you lose $100. Tails, you lose nothing. Suddenly, people became risk-seeking. They preferred to gamble rather than accept a guaranteed loss. This flipping behavior reveals something fascinating about the human mind. We avoid risks when it comes to gains, but we seek risks when trying to avoid losses. Now think about how this shows up in real life. Have you ever held on to a failing investment, hoping it would recover instead of cutting your losses? Or kept clothes you never wear just because you already paid for them? Or stayed too long in a bad situation like a job or even a relationship because leaving feels like losing something you've already invested in? That's loss aversion at work. It also explains why free trials are so effective. When you start using a service for free, you don't feel like you're gaining something, you feel like you already own it. So when the trial ends, canceling feels like a loss, even though you never actually paid for it. Companies understand this deeply. That's why phrases like "don't miss out" or "last chance" are so powerful. They trigger the fear of loss, not the excitement of gain. But why does our brain work this way? From an evolutionary perspective, this makes a lot of sense. For early humans, losses could be life-threatening. Losing food, shelter, or safety wasn't just inconvenient, it could mean death. Gains, on the other hand, were helpful, but not always essential for survival. So over time, our brains became wired to prioritize avoiding losses over acquiring gains. This bias helped our ancestors survive, but in modern life, it can sometimes hold us back. Because today, not every loss is dangerous. Sometimes, taking a risk like starting a new career, investing in an idea, or stepping out of your comfort zone is necessary for growth. But loss aversion makes those risks feel bigger than they actually are. It exaggerates the downside and minimizes the potential upside. There's also something called the endowment effect, closely related to loss aversion. This is the tendency to value something more simply because we own it. For example, if you buy a mug for $5, you might not be willing to sell it for $5. You might demand $10 or more. Why? Because giving it up feels like a loss, and that loss feels stronger than the gain of getting your money back. So, what can you do about it? The first step is awareness. Once you recognize loss aversion, you start to see it everywhere. Next time you're making a decision, ask yourself, am I avoiding this choice because it's truly risky, or just because I'm afraid of losing something? Try reframing your thinking. Instead of focusing on what you might lose, ask what you might gain, or what staying the same might cost you in the long run. Another powerful strategy is to think in probabilities, not emotions. Our brains tend to exaggerate negative outcomes, but when you look at actual chances, the risk often isn't as big as it feels. And finally, accept that some losses are part of progress. Every successful person, every innovation, every breakthrough comes with failures along the way. Avoiding all losses doesn't lead to safety, it leads to stagnation. So, the next time you hesitate, the next time fear of loss holds you back, pause and ask yourself, is this decision protecting me or limiting me? Because sometimes, the biggest risk isn't losing, it's never giving yourself the chance to win.